Hi, it's Cole here from Rosso Coffee Roasters. I'm going to teach you how to make a cappuccino at home. So we're going to use the two-wheel espresso. This is our staple house espresso from Rosso. It's currently a honey processed coffee from the Imperio Rojo mill in Costa Rica and a natural processed coffee from the Yuangan region of Myanmar. So it's really nice, smooth, it's got a crisp acidity, and it's really nicely balanced for espresso. So I've just loaded it into my grinder, and I'm gonna start by taking out my portafilter in my espresso machine. So I'm using a naked portafilter. What that means is there's no spouts here. So you can actually see all of the extraction happen just on the base of the basket. I have 17-gram baskets in here, and it's recommended that you use plus or minus a gram for the basket size. So today I'm gonna use a recipe of 18 grams of coffee for about a 28-second extraction to bring 40 grams of liquid espresso into the cup. And what I've just done is dried out the basket so there's no liquid in here because I don't want to grind my coffee and then have some sort of extraction begin with those ground particles in the base of the basket itself. I'm using a scale to weigh out exactly how much coffee I'm using in my dose, and you'll see why in just a moment here. So it looks like my grinder is giving me a little bit less coffee actually than I'm looking for. It's giving me 17.6 grams. And here in this container, I have just some grounds that I've been taking off to make sure my dose is correct, or I've been adding in to make sure my dose is correct. So just make sure these are fresh. You don't want to leave these very long, overnight, that sort of thing, because they'll affect the quality of the espresso you're creating. So I'm just going to make sure I have 18 grams exactly. Before I tamp this down, you can see that I've created a bit of a mountain here, and there's a lot more coffee here in the middle than there is here on the side. I can actually see a bit of a valley, and then a lot more coffee on this side as well. So a technique I can use is just using my finger and knock everything around to a point that it gets nice and flat, just like that. You don't want to do this too much because you'll create what we refer to as boulders, which might lead to something called channeling. Channeling is something we really want to avoid in the world of espresso. That's when the water itself finds a path of least resistance and just bypasses everything, leading to a sour and hollow and really not pleasant espresso shot. So I've got my 18 grams, and I'm going to use this tamper here to just make sure I'm compressing everything, closing out the air pockets, and creating a nice uniform puck of coffee in my basket. There's some grinds that are floating up here on the top of the basket, so I'm just going to take my palm, clean the top of the basket there, and clean the ears here to make sure when I lock it into my espresso machine, it's creating a seal and forcing the water through the coffee itself. So before I lock it in, I want to do a quick flush on my espresso machine. So now I've back flushed, and what this has done is allowed proper temperature water to come to the forefront of the actual group head. So the water temperature that goes through the espresso itself is going to be of proper degree to really hone in on a nice extraction. I have a scale that I'm using on my tray, and of course you can use the same scale you use to weigh out your dose for the tray, but it's really important to stick to a recipe so that you can create the same coffee again tomorrow morning if you enjoy today's. All right, so I finished my extraction. I've done a 30-second extraction for 39 grams in the cup itself. And to me, that's a nice ratio. It's a little over 2-to-1, and it should create flavors in here that are relatively balanced and easy to drink. If it's a shorter ratio, you're generally going to be more sour or really bright and intense with a syrupy body. If it's a longer ratio, usually a little bit more diluted, a little bit more balanced, but favoring bitters. So I can drink this black, but today we're going to make a cappuccino. I've got some nice milk in here. I'm using a whole milk because I like the higher fat content milks because they'll lead to a little bit more body, a little bit more texture, and for me, a little bit more of an interesting character in this cappuccino. I'm using a pitcher that's got a gradation inside, so I'm wasting as little milk as possible while I'm doing this process. And before I actually steam my milk, I want to take my steam wand and I want to flush it out, because this is all steam. It's going to condense and create some water in here. So the condensation is what I'm going to flush out first. So I'm just going to wrap my milk cloth around the steam wand and give it a quick purge. And then I'll pull this out from the machine. I like to take this on a little bit of an angle downward, and I'll put this on an opposite angle going upward. And what I'm going to try to do here, I refer to as the 3 S's. So you have stretch, silence, and swirl. Stretch is going to be adding texture to the top of the milk. So this will define a latte versus a cappuccino versus a flat white or any other drinks. This is where I'm going to create the foam. Silence is finishing the creation of the foam itself. And then the swirl is taking that foam and integrating it from the top of the pitcher here all the way down to the base to create one homogeneous drinking experience for when we get into our cappuccino. Here we go. Looks like a decent milk steam. Before I do anything with my actual drink, you can see there's milk caked onto my steam wand, and I want to clean that. A wise man once told me, a clean barista is a good barista. There's a little bit of bubbles on the top. So something we can do is a quick tap. That will pop some of those bubbles, and then a quick circular motion like this is going to make sure that we have one fluid texture from top to bottom. Now, I am going to pour a little bit of milk into the base espresso and swirl this around to create the same weight and texture in my espresso that I have in my milk pitcher, so that I'll have one fluid drinking experience from top to bottom in the cup, pouring from high so that none of my milk is to show up on the surface, and then low when I want it to actually show up. So based on how I move the pitcher itself, as I'm pouring, I can create different designs. And I can create a really nice cappuccino at home using the same techniques we use in our cafe at Rosso Coffee Roasters. Cheers.